And
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the conversation series on mediation created with an aim and vision to promote awareness of mediation in the world around us and to talk about mediation from the perspective of a common person. We continue with a short legal disclaimer. The views expressed herein are the voluntary personal perspectives of the speakers and may or may not represent the views of the larger professional community they belong to. The conversation series aims to provide a general overview and awareness on the subject matter involved and may not be construed as a legal or professional advice in any manner whatsoever. This session is being recorded for wide circulation. Let me introduce the main speaker and the guest panelists for today's session on community mediation and Lok Adalat, basically the practice of mediation. We have Mrs. Margaret Chijuki Ibuku. Mrs. Margaret is an activist, political scientist, pastor, mother, and wife. She is the chairman, Parliamentary Staff Association of Nigeria, convener of Nigeria's first Social Justice Conference and Awards, MD Ombudsman State, a housing project through which she is providing affordable housing for over 200 Nigerians. Convener, Hoshana Children and Teenagers Camp. Currently, a PhD candidate researching on the effectiveness of donor agencies in internal displacement in Nigeria. We welcome you on board, Margaret. It's a pleasure to have you around with us.
Thank you very much, Professor Shine. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. As a guest panelist, we have Ms. Garima Joshi. Garima is a management consultant and enthusiastic member of a permanent Lok Adalat. She's a highly spirited person with a flair for helping people out. Her magnetic personality complements her charming smile. Welcome on board, Garima. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Same here, Sonal. Thank you so much for this introduction.
We
Thanks for
also
having me.
have We also have Mr. Sumit Chandar. Sumit is a practicing advocate at Delhi High Court and the Supreme Court of India. He has been appointed as an arbitrator by the Delhi High Court in several cases. He's a mediator with the Delhi High Court Mediation and Conciliation Center. He has done an advanced mediation training program from Pepperdine University, California, USA, and has been accredited in commercial mediation by the Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs. He received an International Law Day Award by Dr. Justice K.G. Balakrishnan, former Chief Justice of India, for his vast experience playing a pivotal role in development and recognition of international mediation and arbitration. He is frequently invited as a legal expert on various news channels and has been a counsel in the famous public interest litigation which led to establishing 40 new courts in Delhi. That's really impressive, Mr. Chandra. So let's call upon Margaret here. Margaret, we want to know about your work, what you are doing in Nigeria, and how you are helping in community mediation or your community through mediation. Margaret, the floor is all up to you.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, um, actually, I am primarily a public servant in Nigeria, and I work with the Public Complaints Commission, that is the Nigerian Ombudsman. And here in Nigeria, the Nigerian Ombudsman is the government agency is that mediates between the population, the government, companies, institutions. So basically, our role is to be an unbiased empire in the issues of disputes and conflicts. And the beauty of it is that the mandate for the commission is that a complainant can just walk in and lodge his complaint. He doesn't have to pay, unlike the courts and other forms of dispute resolution mechanisms. For the Nigerian Ombudsman, you can just walk in, lodge a complaint, your case is treated until the point we get a resolution. So that is where I actually work primarily as an investigation officer. So basically, my everyday work is to mediate in issues of disputes, community disputes, and wherever there is a flaw in administrative process, my work is to make sure that parties involved find a middle ground that is fair and just to all. Actually, the mantra is that as the office, our major mandate is to fight and curb social injustice in Nigeria. So that's basically my primary duty. But since that I am a labor leader, that's a labor activist and a human rights activist who believes that all human beings, my belief is that all human beings have been created equal, irrespective of who we are, whether we were born monarchs or born commoners. Basically, at the end of the day, we are all human beings the same, and we should all get a fair and equal treatment. And it's that belief that has spurred me on or spurred me on to host the first ever social justice conference and awards in Nigeria. We just pioneered that last year. And so one of the things we did in that conference was to bring in stakeholders. We brought in the government and we brought in the people because Nigeria, like for instance, yesterday we went to the polls and you discover is a country that many will say is sitting on the edge, sitting on maybe a can of gunpowder, waiting to explode because of the so many crises we've had. We've had the issues of farmers and herdsmen. We have terrorism issues. We have a lot of insecurity issues that have gone down most, especially in the past 4 years. And we felt that the best way forward, because when you get to the root of these issues, is always about people feeling justly treated, people feeling marginalized, people feeling that they are not being given a listening ear to air their grievances and issues. And the main essence of the conference was to bring in everybody together. And we succeeded in doing that. And we just had a neutral ground. We were like the mediators in the conference. People could come in and air their grievances. Like we had a party. One of the parties that really made a strong representation at the conference were the people from the Niger Delta. The Niger Delta is the region in Nigeria that produces oil. And like you know, Nigeria is one of the top most oil producing countries. And unfortunately, for this particular region that produces this oil, the region is one of the poorest regions in the country. Most of those communities are devastated. Their means of livelihood have been taken away. Most of them are naturally fishermen because these are very, very riverine communities. Most of these communities exist, their houses are built on waters. And the major source of livelihood for them is farming. But you discover that there has been a great devastation of those communities. There is a massive environmental pollution. They are not able to fish anymore. Their farmland, the little farmland they have, has been polluted. And this has been an ongoing grievance. About 10 years ago, there about 10, 12 years ago, or more than, we had the Niger Delta crisis, where we had the Niger Delta militants take over almost the entire part of the southern part of the country. And there was massive violence in that region. And it was still boiling down to the agitation of unfairness and injustice. And over the years, we've tried to manage the situation. The country has tried to manage the situation, but the crisis still remains. It's more like people are just having a sense of a peace that we feel is peace of people sitting on gunpowder that could explode at any time. And so one of the essence of that conference last year, which I convened, was to bring in all the people, all the stakeholders, everybody that has a stake. We invited the general public, we invited everybody, we invited people in the education sector. If you look at the education sector, last year alone, the university community was on strike for 8 months. For 8 months, the universities were out because the university lecturers said that they were being underpaid and that the universities were not being well funded. And so they went on strike for 8 years. Our children were at home for eight months. And so we brought in people from the education sector. We brought in people from the riverine communities to come and talk about oil and gas. We brought in tax, the everyday person, and then people from the taxation sector, because we wanted to look at taxation. I'm just trying to tell you the issues so that you will appreciate why we have to bring in people together and try to mediate so that we can have a form of peace and the calmness in the country. So the major thing now is that Nigerian tax system is lopsided. It's more like the commoners pay the most taxes. There are hardly taxes on luxury goods. There are hardly taxes. The rich people know how to evade taxes. They are giving tax holidays and all that. And then the government goes ahead to reduce their taxes and still funds them. When you look at the major corporations and companies and industries in Nigeria, they are giving different tax waivers. And at the same time, the government still extends funding to them. But the everyday Nigerian who is probably a public servant, who is probably working in a private company, is heavily taxed. He's heavily taxed, his tax is deducted as source. And so we wanted to look at this thing and say, okay, come, let's discuss. Instead of everybody being angry and agitated, come, let's discuss. Government that is responsible for it, the stakeholders responsible for it, everybody come together. Let's look at these issues dispassionately. Yes, in the conference, tempers ran high. In the conference, tempers ran high because people felt offended. And but one thing was very certain. They were happy that for the first time, they had been given an opportunity to come and air their minds. They had been given an opportunity to be, most times people just want to be listened to.
Yes.
Even when they know that you might not have the immediate solution, but they want to be listened to. They want you to see things from their own point of view. They want you to understand their pains. And that was one of the things we did in the conference. We listened. For instance, at the peak of that conference, Nigeria was having a major flooding issue. And after the conference, we partnered with the office where I work in the Public Complaints Commission. And immediately after that conference, an investigation was launched because these things look like the government is not really doing much, but actually in its true essence, during that flooding last year, prior to that, many years prior to that, the government had set up an ecological fund. The ecological fund takes 2% of the oil revenue. And from the oil revenue, whatever the 2% is meant to go back into the ecological fund, which is meant to do stuff like prevention of flooding. But for the past 8 years, consistently, we've been having progressive flooding that gets worse. Last year, it was so bad that entire states were submerged. I'm not talking about communities. I'm talking about states that were submerged. An entire state would be submerged, and nobody could go into the state, nobody could come out. And lives were lost, property were lost. So we after that, we were able to listen to people. We were able to hear the side of the government, where the government said, look, we put down this funding. And then the people said, okay, these are our pains. And from it, we were able to say, okay, let's start tracing what is happening with this funding. What exactly is going on? And from that experience, we're able to calm down the tension in the country at that point by telling people, okay, look, we are now the neutral body. We are ready to look into it and see how it goes. So these are basically issues, how we are trying to do our best to mediate in our communities. Because as a country, we have issues like today. We've had election yesterday, and this is 24 hours later. 24 hours later, the presidential results are not out. We have not gotten the results, and the tensions are high. Yes. And the government is just, couldn't even be moved. They're just like, okay, just wait for it. Their own response is wait for it. Let's wait for the servers to come up and you'll get the results. So you discover that there is actually a need. The need for mediation cannot be overemphasized, because in issues like, for instance, when you take Nigeria into consideration, is a country that has been through so much, especially in the recent past. So the importance of mediation cannot be emphasized. Yes. We need mediation to be able to calm the populace, to be able to get people to calm down, to be able to get people not to take to the streets and cause more damage than we can actually handle. And then on the labor side, like I said, I'm a labor activist. And mostly I work with the Nigerian Labor Congress. My labor platform is an affiliate of the Nigerian Labor Congress. And because of the past military experience we've had, most people are afraid, more like, to come out to air their grievances. So you hardly see bodies and people get up to air their grievances when the government is not treating them fairly. And so it has put the Nigerian labor actually as the one that has the voice to speak. So most times you see the Labor Congress is the one that speaks up against the issues in the society. And then we eventually have to sit down with the government to find a way forward. So that is
Yes.
basically what we do. We have to eventually sit down, and then as labor activists, we're trained with the skill to mediate, because and then to negotiate, most importantly, because somewhere somehow we have to be able to negotiate and find a common ground between the government and the people. Because when the
Yes.
people are agitated, most times it leaves the labor congress in a position to speak up. Because if labor doesn't speak up, who actually speaks up? So
Yes.
labor does both the agitation and at the same time the mediation. So it really puts the Nigerian labor in a very peculiar situation where we have to agitate and at the same time mediate. And because ideally there should have been civil society groups, parliamentarians that should be able to speak up in issues of policies that are not meeting well with the people. But maybe because of our past experience, most people are not able to speak up. So it leaves us, like I said, in a position for us to speak and at the same time sit at the table. So we speak up and at the same time we end up on the table to negotiate, probably to mediate at the same time, and most importantly, to come up with a solution that favors both the government and the people. For instance, we've had the issue of fuel, the increase in the price of pump price of fuel, of petrol. And
Margaret, I want to stop you there for some time, because what you are saying is very relevant. And when we talk about community issues like these, that you talked about, river flooding, these are the issues that affect a larger portion of the community. The labor issues, they are the life of a country where, oil is the natural biggest resource, as you're talking about. And the labor involved, and the labor is not happy. So let's give a little break here, because I want to know the Indian perspective from Sumit here. Let me call upon Sumit, and then we'll come back to you, Margaret. Sumit, when she was talking about labor issues, the issues between the farmers and the fishermen that she talked about, do you relate to something that is happening in India also, especially the farmers thing, that lasted for a long time, and that was a community mediation done by, I think, Mrs. If I remember, Sadhana Ramachandran ma'am, right? Because
Yes.
she taught me, that's why I know her. So, what is the similarity here? Because these factors, these issues affect a larger portion of the community world over, and how things are. Because as Margaret is also telling, that people, the government is not there, doesn't listen. So they have to raise their voice. At the same time, they have to be at the mediation table to solve those issues. So, Sumit, up to you. What do you think? India has also some similarities there?
So, first of all, let me say that what Margaret has brought to our notice about mediation that takes place in her country, I think in India or across the world, like I said, its mediation remains very common on the same rules and guidelines. The process of mediation is a international process which has been devised. It's a very scientific process. So what she has spoken about, very similar, we have it here in India as well. We have several aspects, not only the farmers' protest, there are also other protests which had taken place where mediators were appointed in community mediations. But let us first understand what exactly is mediation. Now, if I go by mediation in its true sense, mediation is a voluntary process. So unless the parties are willing to come forward themselves, the mediation cannot take place. So the first criteria for mediation is that you cannot force somebody to come in for mediation. So we always attempt mediation. And like Margaret had rightly said, that people need someone to listen. So
Yes.
as mediation, whenever a mediation process is there are people who are appointed either by the courts or by the government who can actually sit, listen to people and resolve their issues. In fact, rather than resolving their issues, what they do attempt to do is to enable the people and empower the parties to find the resolution themselves. And that is the beauty of mediation, because once you empower the parties to arrive at a mediation, the possibility of them going back against whatever settlement has taken place is very rare.
Yeah.
If that, if for a reason the mediator tends to in any manner advise or impose a solution, that solution may fail at a later stage because the parties would feel that it wasn't their wish, it was basically the mediator's imposition. So
Yeah.
in fact, it is made very clear to us that we listen to the parties, and in India and across, I'm sure, that we tend to empower the parties to come to a logical conclusion, to a conclusion which is beneficial and acceptable to both the parties. Once the parties arrive at a logical solution, we enter into a settlement deed. But then again, in labor courts, these issues are also taken up. There are a lot of issues where labor unions are formed. The union then takes up on the matter for all the laborers, a lot of number of laborers together, to a court. The court then refers it to a Lok Adalat, and the entire process in Lok Adalat, where the judge comes down from his chair. Now look at this, a very simple but very significant body language, as I would say it, a gesture by the court itself. A court, while deciding the case, is a judge sitting at a pedestal. But when it comes down to mediation, the judge will come step down from his chair and sit at the same level along with the parties to help settle their disputes.
So
So
that is really cool. And let's talk to Garima also for pitching in here about Lok Adalat, because she's been a member of, I think, for 4, 5 years. Garima now is a permanent member of a permanent Lok Adalat, and she's been doing that every week, yeah, Garima,
Right,
over to you. Just
right, right, Sonal. So I think this is, firstly, I would just say that, Margaret and Sumit, they have been working on like, very pressing issues and helping the community at large. But once we come into picture, right? So we are a mini court setup. We get individual cases here. We do not get community issues at large. So, but yes, I would second Sumit in saying that Lok Adalats are basically very informal setup, right? So and also, like, Margaret said, that people just want to get heard. They want that the other person who is in power should actually listen to their point of view, in their words, what they want to tell. So I believe Lok Adalats were basically formed for that purpose. And for this thing, we have permanent Lok Adalats, which I am a part of, and we have a sitting every day, and it's like 5 days a week. So we are a forum, right? So we have people who come to us, and we have our regular process of going through a case. But like Sumit said, that we do not consider ourselves to be, to be actually sitting at a pedestal and then, deciding or, hearing a case. Rather, we would rather sit with both the parties and, enable them and ask them that what is it that both of you want. So in a way, you are asking for a settlement, which is actually good for like both of them, because you don't want them to get into years of litigation.
yes.
And at the end, they go very satisfied, because I think they come with an aim that they want to nudge a bit and want to settle the matter, right? So I think mediation and lok adalat, they do go hand in hand, but we are limited to particular cases that come to us or that get referred to us. Mediation, I would say, is something which is done on a larger scale. Yeah.
So, yeah, now let's go back to Margaret. Margaret, you heard Garima also, and I think what you were talking, I think the similar procedure you are following when you said that, we get a lot of people and we make them understand, and between the government and the labor issues, you how people react and how much are you able to help people, because that's very important to know what's the outcome of these efforts. So would you like to tell us something about that? How you are able to make a difference? Margaret, you are on mute.
Well, really, I will say that we're making as much impact as we can make. Like I said, I'm sitting here on two counts. First of all, I will look at it from the ombudsman, the Nigerian ombudsman, where I work. So from that perspective, I will say we are making a lot of impact. But there is something very peculiar about the Nigerian ombudsman. We do not necessarily, I will not say we imbibe mediation in its full practice, because ours is to look at administrative processes. Yes, we are not a court, but we can fault a party. Unlike the regular mediation where you allow people to come to whatever their own settlement, in the Nigerian Ombudsman, the act empowering us actually gives us room to look at the administrative procedure, the administrative process. What exactly does it say? Who exactly has gone out of it? Okay, when two parties, for instance, I'm going to give you, what now makes us different from a court is that when you go to the court of law, let's imagine there is a community that maybe a railway passed through, and or a company came to a particular community and purchased land, and they have not been able to complete their obligations to the community. I'm giving that as an instance. Probably if they were to go to the court will be able to say, okay, no, you did not pay, we are awarding you this for damages and all that. But what the ombudsman would do is to sit with the two parties. Okay, what exactly has happened? We find out from the community. Okay, we ask the company, do you agree? Did you ever enter into an agreement to say you will pay this or you will do this for this community? They'll probably say yes or no. We'll find out why have you not been able to do that. They will say why. And unlike the court of law, instead of giving a judgment to say, okay, now you are fining you go and pay this and we'll pay you, pay this for damages. We're not going to look at it from the perspective, can this company actually survive if we fine them? If we give the company these damages, are they actually going to be able to survive and scale through? And we're able to bring the community and the company together to say, okay, how can we forge a way forward in this matter? So basically, sometimes we will have to take a stand. Sometimes it looks as if a judge, who is the Honorable Chief Commissioner, most times sits in what we call a case conference. And eventually he is the one that he leads the two parties. He tries to find a common ground while having in mind the laid down laws and procedures. And at the end of the day, he comes to an agreement he feels is fair to both parties. So there is a kind of mediation that the ombudsman in Nigeria practices. We don't practice it in its full entirety where we leave only the parties to come up with their own settlement. We also look at it in line with what the procedure, the law that is there on ground, what has it said, who breached the administrative process. So that is one aspect. So in that count, on the level of the Nigerian Ombudsman, I would say we've really recorded a lot of successes, bearing in mind that that is not paid. People don't pay. So we really have a lot of the regular, the everyday Nigerian working and get settlement for their issues and have a bit of respite from whatever form of conflict they have found themselves in. So I would say we've had a lot of success on that angle. And then the issue of on the side of labor, I will give you an instance of what happened last year. So the country has been having what we call form subsidy, where the country pays to marketers, independent petroleum marketers. It's a very funny situation that we produce oil, we don't refine it, we produce oil, it leaves the country, is refined outside the country, then independent marketers buy it from the people refining it outside the country and import it back into the country. It's really very, very dicey. So we produce oil, we don't refine, although we have refineries here, but the very refineries have been grounded. So we export the oil is refined outside Nigeria, and then independent marketers import them back. So what the government has been doing over the years is that they pay a subsidy, they pay a part of, they pay the independent marketers to bring down the prices of the fuel at the pump. But in recent times, the government says we can't keep up with this. We really can't keep up with paying independent marketers. It's no more viable. The country is really getting really indebted. And it's been a problem for the people because the people are now asking, questions are beginning to arise. If we produce oil, why do we, as a country that is producing oil, have to be buying oil? If you remove this subsidy, the cost of the petroleum is going to become very high. So why do we have to pay so high for something that we are producing? Meanwhile, every year you're taking money out of the system to say that you're repositioning the refineries. Why haven't you gotten the refineries to work? So last year we really entered into a crisis, or about 2 years back, and there was almost a total shutdown of the economy. The labor threatened to shut down. But eventually we were able to find the country was almost getting grounded. This is about the third time labor is getting into disputes. The people are getting into disputes where everybody, the country is shut down, things are shut down, everybody downs their tools to say we can't continue. But like I told you, the labor is two-faceted here. The labor makes the complaint, and then we still sit at the table to negotiate and mediate. So at the end of the day, the labor was able to come up with a conclusion. So, okay, look, we've looked at it truly. The government can't keep paying the subsidy. We are able to shift ground. And so the government and the labor was able to come up with a conclusion to say, okay, thus far can you go with a settlement. You can only remove this percentage of the subsidy. You can't take it all out. And then you're going to provide buses for the people. You're going to take off taxes from civil servants, because the moment the cost of a pump price increases, there's going to be inflation, because you're not going to have put on ground well how to control inflation. So you are not going to tax civil servants on some wages that you have just recently given them. So we're able to come up with a settlement that favored both the government and favored the organized labor. Yes, the people might not have been completely happy, because what the people want to hear is let's shut down the country, don't do the subsidy. But somehow these are some of the successes we've recorded over time. Being able to manage the situation where the people give up a little and the government gives up a little, and we still keep the economy going. So basically, that's one of the major successes.
That's a very progressive thought, because what struck me was that ombudsman process that you were talking about, and when the law and the legalities are involved, they see that whether the company is or has the power to pay those taxes, and then accordingly they will impose those taxes or penalties. So that's a very progressive thought system that we can actually imbibe from your country. Now, Garima, I think Mr. Chandra is, Mr. Chandra, you there? Sumit? Okay. Garima, let's talk to you. When you have seen Lok Adalats happen, do you recall any of this procedure that that credence was given to, like she said, to something that was novel? This is that the company doesn't have paying capacity, what you will do for the community, so something good or something out of the box. Do you ever remember anything, any instance that happening?
Yeah, so like I said, that Lok adalats get limited to the people who actually approach the forum, right?
Yes.
So I remember vividly, there was this case wherein the builder was actually supposed to give the plot sizes of 180 square yards, right? But he could only manage 179.85. So there was a difference of what, 0.25 decimal, and
Okay.
if you see, it is really negligible. But if you go to the authority who was actually supposed to do the registry for the plot owners, they flatly refused, because what a law is a law. What is there on the papers is on the paper. So even if the people they were staying there, they could not get anything official about it, just because it was a matter of 0.25 square yards. So I don't know, somehow one of the occupants, they actually approached us, and we went through the case. So it was quite unbelievable, silly, that why would somebody do that. So we called upon both the parties, that what is the matter. And if you would just see, both of them were right. Both of them were actually correct in their own right. Right? You cannot go against the law, what is actually written on the papers. And there is a small difference. So they just mentioned that, if we'll get an order, if we'll get something from this court, we'll be able to do it. Otherwise, we can't do it. So I think that was, something that we thought that, so also I would just like to mention here that Lok Adalats were actually formed on the basis of natural justice, common sense. You need not be a something, as in, you need not have really deep knowledge of legalities for this.
Yes,
But
definitely.
if you have it in you that you want to help people at large, some kind of small but very relevant issues. So, Lok Adalat is something that you can go to. So I think that was one case where we thought that, okay, this can be done and this should be done. So we got a number of cases after that. Number of occupants came to us that we want to get the same thing done. So I think that was like one issue where we actually went against the thing and did it for all the occupants.
So really, if I may say so, you touch the human chord. That emotional aspect of the dispute was handled
You
in.
do, you do, yes.
Yes, yes,
Yes. I
yes,
think when you talk about mediation, when you talk about alternate dispute redressal, you have to walk that extra mile.
yes.
That okay, legality is one thing. What is the other thing that we can look into and work for? Yeah,
So that I think goes around the globe, because like
absolutely.
Margaret was also saying that we make sure that the labor sits with the government representatives and they try to resolve the issues amicably. And like that, I really like that example that is because as the law would say it, Sumit is uh, because if Sumit would also say that when you're following the law, if a penalty is imposed, it is imposed. Now, if the company is not able to pay for that penalty, it will have to sell off its buildings, get it mortgaged, and just pay the penalty. What for? You're really killing an organization just to get what? If you can help the organization build it up for the purpose of the community, that's a progressive thought. So Sumit, do you have any instance from your experience?
In fact, there are several instances, not just one. Let me give you an example, where in when we talk about community mediation and to a great extent an aggressive one. In our case was in our country was the case of the Ayodhya issue.
Yeah.
I'm not restricting it to any particular kind of dispute.
Yeah.
Disputes.
I have given the legal disclaimer, by the way. You can talk.
Thank you so much. And whatever anyways, I'm going to talk is going to be as per what the law or what the
Yeah.
court has passed. So I hope I don't do anything that will jeopardize your channel.
Yeah.
Now,
No, it's okay.
that the entire case of Ayodhya, which became very popular, was basically a land dispute,
Yeah.
where part of the land, of course, was with the Waqf board, and there was a dispute whether the ownership belongs to the Waqf board or the Ram Janma Bhumi. So this case went on to the Supreme Court. Now the Supreme Court appointed Justice Sanjay Hegde, and this was a case where mediation panel was appointed by the Supreme Court, and the Babri Masjid land dispute in Ayodhya, they said that the mediators, after talking to the parties, are going to file a report. Now, since I had earlier informed you that reports are confidential, in fact, the entire
Yes.
process is confidential. So what is discussed there cannot be made available to the
Yes,
general public.
definitely. Please
So the
don't do
Supreme
that.
Court says you discuss it with them and file your report in a sealed cover and file it before us.
Yes.
When that came, it was taken, that report was of course taken into consideration, and the attempt was that a settlement can take place between not only two different parties, but parties belonging to an absolute different caste, religion, sect altogether. That was of course with Justice Khalifullah. And not only that, when we say mediators, we don't only restrict ourselves to mediation. We also, mediators, we don't say that you only need to be lawyers, at least in our country. Now, Margaret, of course, can tell us how it goes there, but we don't restrict it to the legal field, the lawyers and the judges. Though this panel was headed by a former judge of the Honorable Supreme Court of India, the other panelist on the mediation panel was one of the spiritual gurus, the
Yeah.
Art of Living founder, Sri Sri Ravi Shankar. Now, Sri Sri Ravi Shankar is purely spiritual guru, has a lot of followers in himself, and is not directly involved with law, litigation, or in any form of court. It was also, there was a very senior mediator, which was Sri Ram Panchu, who was also there from
Yes.
our
Yes.
country, right? So the Supreme Court in this case had created the panel which had discussed and sorted out the disputes, and they filed a report. Of course, that report eventually helped resolve the issue of the Ayodhya, the mainstream Ayodhya case, which went on for a very, very long time in our country.
Yes.
So not only this, there are a lot of several cases like this where the community mediation had helped resolve disputes and finally come to a conclusion to help the courts as well as the parties arrive at justice.
Yes. That's absolutely true. Margaret, for your information, maybe you will not be able to understand. India is a diverse religious country where two religion sects have a lot of uh, various religions, of course, but two main religion heads have a lot of differences, and there was a piece of land which was in dispute because some of the religious monuments needed to be built there. So both the religion heads were laying their laying their claim on that piece of land. So it was a very big issue, and it had been for years, and it was settled, as Mr. Chandra also told, it was settled by mediation. So that's
Oh, wow.
that's how globally, a peaceful dispute resolution actually works, and it works more in the aspect of humane, like you talked about, like Garima talked about how, a small square yard, how much negligible amount of and then settlement happens. If that case, Garima, would have gone to the litigation, it would have, it would have stayed for a lot of time. What do you suggest?
Sure, sure. Yeah, so I think Lok Adalat, mediation, alternate dispute redressal forums were actually formed with this idea that people do not have to get into years of litigation and then, maybe come out with like nothing. So, there is a very famous saying that justice delayed is justice
Yeah,
denied.
absolutely.
Absolutely
Absolutely.
right. So yeah, I think we should actually take a cue from that, and actually believe in this, that mediation is the way forward for a lot of issues.
Yes, definitely. And community mediation, especially, is a very tiring thing. Margaret, I would want to know how tiring it is for an ombudsman, how different skill sets are required by you yourself. you know how do you manage a lot of people on board, stakeholders, and do they agree, or do how easy or tough on a scale of say 1 to 10 it is, this mediation is difficult?
Well, first of all, I would like to really thank Garima. I've really liked listening to her and to Summit. And maybe there's a question I'll come up with. I would really like to know how the local dialect works. Is it like a civil society? Is it a government setup? I would really like to know how it works because I'm quite intrigued by it. And actually, what the question says how difficult it is actually can be difficult when you're dealing with government. Most times government doesn't even want to respond. That's the first problem we have, to get them to respond. And but in recent times, the Nigerian Ombudsman has started trying to invoke the act that enables the ombudsman by calling them in. Last year, we had to get a judge to start calling in and prosecuting the government organizations that have refused to even respond. It's difficult, really. Once most times is with government, if it's with we handle private cases. With private cases, with communities, most times is easy to resolve. You call them in, they're willing to talk, they're willing to find the level ground. But most times when it is actually the community or the individual against the government, it becomes very difficult. Even to respond to your letters, to your inquiries, most times they don't even want to come to the negotiation table. They don't want to come to the mediation table. But by and large, I would say we've been able to make progress. We're making progress gradually because it's even worse off. It's even worse off. I think the courts have it worse because governments most times here, they don't even obey the court orders. You could go take them to court for all you care. When you're done, the court gives the others, they flaunt the others and continue. So I would say we are making progress. I've discovered that if I were to say, I would say most people are more tuned to settlement outside the courts because number one is faster, it's cheaper,
Yes.
it preserves relationships beyond now.
Yes.
So most people are more open to it. And I don't know about you over there, but here in Nigeria, most times between the rich and the poor, the rich is always threatening, I'll take you to court. So in Nigeria, in Nigeria, once you take somebody to court, you're already his oppressor. he
That
already sees he already sees you as an oppressor. But when you say, okay, I've gone to the ombudsman or I've gone to the mediator, they are more open. They are not seeing you as your oppressor. They see you more as somebody that is willing to find a level playing ground. And the example you gave about India, that was really quite nice. We've not really gotten to that stage where like you've been discussing with Chijoke on the other platform, the practice of mediation is up and coming in Nigeria. The courts are really beginning to imbibe it a little by referring cases to say, okay, go mediate first. But because it's a new practice, it's something new. Most times when people are referred to say, okay, go and mediate first, they are not even invested in the process because they see it as a process that is not going to give them what they are looking for. It still
Yes.
boils down to the big man and poor man mentality, because the person that has threatened you and taken you to court wants to come out of court victorious. So when
Yes.
they are sending him from the court to say, okay, why don't you go to a mediator first? He's not willing. He's not investing himself in it. He just goes there for let me just go so he can come back to the court. So we gradually, that is why there is a need for us to start creating that awareness. And perhaps if the government could borrow a leaf from India, where high profile cases are being referred to mediation, maybe to give the people more confidence in it. So I'm looking forward to the day where governments will refer and bring in mediators to look into our high profile cases, because it will really help us as a country to begin to embrace mediation more. And actually, I've been in India before. I've actually spent 3 months in Vellore before. So I have
Okay.
a little bit of idea of what India is like, the religious differences and all that. So I really have a little bit of idea.
That's really amazing, because yes, it is globally the same, and Karima will also pitch in here that yes, definitely, because this idea of taking to the court, that the idea of I am victorious, I won, and the other person lost. This idea is so much imbibed. It's so much imbibed. It's almost like it flows in the blood. To take that out, that mentality out, is what so many of us are struggling here. I think now, when I talk to you, when we talk to you, I think it is globally everybody is struggling to get that idea out of the mind of people, that yes, there is nothing of losing. And if you go to litigation, actually, I mean, both the parties have actually lost it, lost the hope of settling, and they don't see it as a loss. That's the beginning of the loss, that the journey of the loss, actually. Because when there is no legality involved, when nobody is right and wrong, and still you are hell bent on proving that somebody is right and somebody is wrong, then you have actually lost the human touch of, uh, per se. So, and that's why I think we are trying peer mediation, so that that mentality, at least from the kids' side, from the beginning, the future generation is at least healed, and the idea is imbibed that there is nothing called loss or winning. So Garima, what's your opinion? And yes, she also wanted to know about what is Lok Adalat and how it functions, because
Right.
that has to be, because I don't think very common people in India also would be very much aware about it. So let's hear from you. That is very important aspect.
Right. So answering to you, Margaret, first. So yes, Lok Adalat is basically a government setup, and I am a member in Permanent Lok Adalat Public Utility Services. So what comes under public utility services are certain services like banking, insurance, power, transport, healthcare, education, and these are the issues that are not compoundable, right? And so if you want to come to us for a claim, then the claim should not be more than 1 CR. So we have a limit there also. But yes, we are responsible for like one-to-one cases. We can't pass an order. We can't pass an award, which is like binding to the entire to the entire community, right? So we have our limitation there. And so, like you said, Sonal, I would just throw some light on that. That you're absolutely right when you say that there are people who are not really aware of their rights. Okay, so and so if you say that something, you felt that there was a deficiency in service of of any public utility, you wouldn't go to any of the forums, or you wouldn't approach any of the courts thinking why to get into litigation, why to get into,
Yes.
years of wasting money and effort and time. So
And
why
that too
not just
against the
keep
government.
quiet? Yeah, why not just keep quiet and be at the receiving end? But no, I think we should be aware of our rights. We should know what is there for like common people, where to go. So I think India as a country is actually lacking there. We need to have legal literacy that way. We need to have some legal aid programs. We need to use social media, mass media for this purpose. That we have forums which can actually help and give you informal and speedy justice. So so for that, yeah, I think we have a long way to go.
Yes. So that Margaret, she talked about, because when certain issues that will obviously take a lot of time of the court will are related to certain claims, or maybe electricity board, something. Like we have Sumit here, he will talk about, Garima was talking about non-compoundable offenses. You can throw some light on that?
See, of course, there are offenses which are compoundable and non-compoundable. There are simpler offenses which are compoundable, where the statute itself provides for, if a settlement takes place, it gives the option for the party to, or the complainant to, withdraw the complaint. So
Okay.
settlement can take place in compoundable offenses, and the offenses can be closed. The non-compoundable ones are the ones where the option to compound or settle between the parties is not given, because those are heinous or considered as heinous
Yes.
offenses. But some offenses, even when we talk about heinous or so-called defined as serious offenses under the Indian Penal Code, there are offenses. Say, for example, matrimonial disputes. You have a complaint in a matrimonial dispute. A wife can file a complaint in India under Section 498A of the Indian Penal Code, and that is an offense of cruelty on demand for dowry.
Yes.
So that is taken as a very, very serious offense in our country. So it is a non-compoundable offense.
Yes.
Just because it is a non-compoundable offense, should it not be settled? And if it is settled, what is the effect? Because the law provides for non-compounding not to be there as an option to the parties. In that case, also, the Supreme Court has held in several cases that if there is settlement taking place between the parties have the power under Section 482 CRPC to approach the Honorable High Court. And on
Yes.
the grounds of settlement, these High Court itself can quash the proceedings
Yes. Are compounded.
as compound, and not as compounded, because compounding technically would mean where the parties have themselves chosen to withdraw the complaint.
Yes.
So in a compoundable offense, it's very simple. The parties itself can withdraw the complaint. But in a non-compoundable, since the parties cannot withdraw, the court, the Honorable High Court of every state, under using their inherent powers under Section 482 CRPC, will
Can
quash
quash.
the FIR and close the dispute.
Yes. And 498, I think, has to be done by the court itself.
The
Cannot be
quashing has
done.
to be
Yeah.
done by the High Court,
Quashing.
not even
Yeah.
in the trial court.
Not even the district court. Yes. So that is there. So non-compoundable offenses are not taken to lok adalats, and yes, matrimonial issues are also not being handled at the lok adalats, right? They
It
are,
is non-compoundable.
yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So that is the difference here. So that also brings us to, like you were saying, I think we have handled community mediation, which takes, from your perspective in Margaret, in Nigeria, you are doing through ombudsman services, where legalities are also being handled by the person, and it is being seen, that's what I understood, it is being seen what wrong is happening. Whereas mediation, there is a fine line that you will not go into the right and the wrong of it, you facilitate communication. That's what I understood, right, Margaret?
Yes, to some extent, to some extent, like I said, is a blend of both the conciliation, the mediation, with a blend. Is a blend.
Yes.
Yes.
So that was really a very, very intriguing and nice session. So any
Yes.
closing
And
comments,
like Summit,
Garima?
no. Okay, I
Yes,
know
yes.
Summit had asked earlier if in Nigeria is only lawyers that mediate. No, in Nigeria, anybody can certify as a mediator. But like I've said, so it's not yet so known. So for now, it's mostly lawyers that have the knowledge, it's mostly lawyers that have delved into it. But there are quite a few Nigerians that are out there getting the certification. Actually, we have been practicing mediation. Our traditional system practices mediation. It gives the traditional rulers what the traditional rulers do in our villages is mediation. It's just that now we're bringing it to the contemporary form that you need the certification and the government recognition to say, oh, this and that. So no, it's not only lawyers here. Anybody can actually be a mediator,
Be a
but in
mediator.
contemporary times, you just need a certification to go through the training.
That's really wonderful. So any closing comments by Garima?
Yeah. Sonal, firstly, I would just say that thanks for having me. It was actually great listening to Margaret and Sumit, and them working on such big issues, and also doing wonders in their chosen field. So it was truly great to actually listen to both of you. So for me, I would just say that the government started ADR forums with a certain purpose, and I think we have not reached there yet, but we are definitely on the right path. And like I said, we face a lot of challenges in terms of uh, legal literacy, awareness, and like we say that you can get horse to the water, but you cannot make it drink it. So you can get people on that forum, but unless both the parties are ready to actually find the middle path, you can't do much about it. So I think we need a certain change in the mindset there also.
Yes.
So yeah, but I think it is actually a great concept, and something that actually does wonders in the bigger, and yeah, in, I would say, in actually bigger causes.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. This is there to stay, and this is the solution when we have a bigger population, bigger disputes happening, lot of cases going to the courts and lot of cases pending in the courts because not every case needs to go to the court so that the courts can actually, you know, concentrate on things that have happened. So, yes, Sumit, anything that you would like to say? So we wind up and conclude because it's more than an hour we have been talking. Sumit, I think Sumit has some network issues. That's why he was. So, Margaret, it has been a wonderful experience, and thank God we talked to you. We knew about uh, what you are doing there, and how we are also managing. And yes, community mediation and local bigger issues need to be handled nicely and more patiently. Like you were also saying, your work involves a lot of patience. So thank you
Yes.
so much, Garima, Margaret, Sumit. It's been a pleasure to converse with you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having
Thank
us.
you. Right.